There we go. Hey, everybody. Sorry we're late. It is my fault, as always. Um, we got Kryptonian Prime and we got Darkstone Bender in the house with us today. Thank you all for being patient and waiting before we started. Um, I got sidetracked on my end, and I apologize for that. So today we're going to go into, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, the Gateway Experience Project. Kind of a few different names on it. And basically what it is talking about outer body experiences. And a guy on this article, this document that is, I posted it in the link for you all, so you can, if you want, go in the description and open the document, and then you can kind of follow along kind of what we're talking about here on this document. It's been just released. How long ago, Stone, was it released?
I think it was only 3 or 4 months ago or something like that.
Right, and this is
got the release date. It was pretty recent.
And this document actually dates back to June of 1983. And so it's quite interesting in itself. And it's what, 26 pages long? Something like
26 pages. Yep. I think actually it was released, kind of remember, in 2010, but it just didn't get picked up until recently, or at least from what I've heard of it.
Okay.
Pretty recently. But that's a long time from 83 till 2010, you know?
Right.
Freedom of Information Act.
And so it's the released, this is a document from the commander of the U.S. Army Operational Group that wrote this and did his assessment on this the Gateway experience. And what I find really intriguing as we go through this is the people that he references through this article. We're going to dive into who these people are and how it all kind of ties together. And I think that it ties together with a lot of different situations that we all experience in life today. And I think this is why it's really intriguing to us. And so I don't know if you guys have a chance, go ahead and open up the document that's in the description, because you're really going to want to follow along with this, because it is, well, let's just say it's, for my point of view, it's really analytical. And I have a hard time sometimes reading articles that are really, we get into like the big words and the big processes, and I kind of like it more simple, but he tries to do a really great job of it, but it's still things that we need to look up and to understand it and figure it out. And so I don't know if I should start with just kind of what it is that he was tasked with here. So he was tasked to provide an assessment of the Gateway experience, okay, in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. Which, see, you got your first sentence right there, which is like, okay, what the hell does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Assessment of the Gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. Now, I try to do a wiki link on trying to break down exactly what the Gateway process is. Which is so weird, you guys. I actually found it at work last week, and I tried to Google it today, and I cannot find anything Now in Wikipedia, in the wiki thing on Google, on the gateway experience. How weird
That
is
is.
that? I try to do different things: gateway process, experiment, experience, process. I can't find anything now.
That's crazy, man. Because yeah, it's the gateway process is what the paper says. So you can't find
Yeah,
anything on Wikipedia, and it was released from Freedom of Information Act. I don't know, man.
I'll try again. Gateway. Um, process, because this is kind of right off of the document wiki. Because I was using that for for the opening part of it, and damn it, if I can't find it now because it had really a great opening on how I wanted to present the opening part of this.
Well, you still have the email, right? Can you look at that at the same time as the live
I
stream?
have printed out. I have the document in front of me. I printed it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, so I don't know. Sorry, I'm distracted here. You probably know why. Oh yeah. Sorry, guys. In the middle. Of Bam. All right. So sorry, Stone. You want to take over real quick? Something just happened here that I got to deal with. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, man.
I'm sorry. I'll let you know. I'm in the middle of a. I started a poker tournament. I'm sorry, guys. I started a poker tournament earlier, and I didn't think I was going to last this long. And right now, I am 6 out of 12 people remaining out of 169 players. So I'm a little distracted, a little bit, but I didn't want to prolong starting this. So I'm trying to do both here, and I apologize for that. Just being honest.
Well, you know what I could do is because I just figured out how to bring it up on my phone live here. Let me just read the first page here, right out of it for everybody. And sorry about got a little bit of a cold, so I'm just on the tail end of it. And it's kind of small on my phone, but if you guys can hear me from here, I'll begin. Okay. All right, I'll start from the top. Approved for release. Oh, 2003. Okay. CIA, Department of the Army, U.S. Army Operational Group, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, Fort George, G. Meade, Maryland. Subject, analysis and assessment of gateway process. 2, the Commander, U.S. Army Operational Group, Fort Meade. And it states, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanical and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business, initially based on conversations with a physician who took the gateway training with me. I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Itzhak Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. Then I found it necessary to delve into various sources for information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature and functioning of human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and reasonably lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemispheric synchronization techniques employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved, excuse me, recourse to theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the time-space dimension and the means by which expanded human consciousness transcends it in achieving Gateway's objectives. Finally, I again found it necessary to use physics to bring the whole phenomenon of out-of-body states into the language of physical science. That part's important, I think, to remove the stigma and its occult connotations. To remove the stigma of its occult connotations and put it in that part's important too, I think, because from as far as I'm concerned, the stigma of the occult is really not to be removed, especially when dealing with the government, which is where this came from, and put it in a frame of reference suited to objective assessment.
Yeah, and if you look at that, what he's kind of saying is that he doesn't, and I think he gets a little bit more in detail on that part down farther, that in order to kind of go through this and explain it, not to have certain religions feel that it's dogma. Where's that part at? It's a little bit farther down, right, where it's not considered satanic in nature, so that all religions can comprehend what it is without judgment of it being evil, which you'll see throughout this, it actually is nothing more but demonic and evil, this whole process. Yeah, they're trying to make it sound to where all religions can accept doing this and understanding how to do it.
Right. Why would they even put that in there?
Right. Go ahead and keep going.
All right, this is same page, but just part 2 and 3. I began the narrative by briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation. We all know that's been around for a while. So that their objectives and mode of functioning could be compared in the reader's mind with the Gateway experience as the model of its underlying mechanics and development. Additionally, that introductory material is useful in supporting the conclusions of the paper. I indicate that at times these related techniques may be useful entry points to accelerate movement into the Gateway experience. Niels Bohr, the renowned physicist, once responded to his son's complaints about the obtuse nature of certain concepts in physics by saying, "You're not thinking, you are merely being logical." The physics of altered human consciousness deals with some conceptualizations that are not easily grasped or visualized exclusively in the context of ordinary left brain linear thinking. So to borrow Dr. Bohr's mode of expression, part of this paper will require not only logic, but a touch of right brain intuitive insight to achieve a complete, comfortable grasp of the concepts involved. Nevertheless, once that is done, I'm confident that their construction and application will stand up to the test of rational critique.
So as we get into this, this is just an overview, this letter that Stone is reading. And what that part is going to be in reference to is that how your left-right your left brain, your right brain function. So part of your brain brings in logic, right? And it will convey that logic to the other side of your brain, which then your body responds to through emotion or physicalness. And what he's saying is, in order to understand this, you have to not think in one side of the brain, and it's going to get into, for instance, where they have the ability to use through sound, put in one side of your brain. For instance, the example he's going to use is it's going to tell you, your brain, that your left leg is numb. And that message will be taken in as truth, relayed to the other side of the brain, which doesn't question where it comes from, but then will assess that information to you. And then your leg will physically become numb. And they can do that through sound waves, to for just a simple example. So that's kind of his overlaying in that description in his opening letter, what that's going to refer to, that we'll get into later. So
Yeah, I think I think that's funny too, because now you have, I mean, that was 1983, so they were working on it well before that, but now we have targeted individuals who you know experience some of that, sometimes that physical pain, remotely being sent into different parts of their body, being numb or in pain. And there's so many people. I mean, there's a targeted individual day now where they get together and try to bring attention to it. And there's so many people that are experiencing that you have to kind of take that seriously,
Right.
I'm sure
And
some of them are just are not experiencing it, but
Landon Pets had a question. What about right-brained, left-handed people? Actually, they do touch on that. They actually do touch on left-handed people. So at some point through this that we'll get to. It's kind of an in-depth thing, but and then getting back to that, is Jacques Bentov that he referred to? We're going to actually go into finding out who that person is, and in the next segment of this opening letter that Stone will get to, Niels Bohr, we're going to get into who this guy is too, and it all ties together, kind of like the bigger picture of like things. For example, just real quick, Niels Bohr. We're going to get in. You'll hear his name on the next paragraph that Stone's going to read here in a second. He actually was there in 1954 on project that created CERN. And I found interesting that CERN's original name was not CERN. It was the European Organization for Nuclear Research. That was the original project, later termed CERN. Found that interesting. We'll get into that too. So if you want to go ahead and go on to the next paragraph, Stone.
Sure, just give me a second. I got to back out of here and find it. Let's see. Okay. Oh. Okay, this is only the second page here so far. Paradoxically, having gone to such great lengths to avoid trying to render judgments based on an occult or dogmatic frame of reference, in the end, I found it necessary to return, at least briefly, to the question of the impact of the gateway experience on common belief systems. I did so because although it was essential to avoid attempting to render an assessment in the context of such systems, I felt that it was necessary to, after having completed the analysis, to point out that the resulting conclusions do not do any violence to the fundamental mainstream of either Eastern or Western belief systems. I would beg to differ on that. Unless that point is clearly established, the danger exists that some people will reject the whole concept of the gateway experience in the mistaken belief that it contradicts and is therefore alien to all that they hold to be right and true. This study is certainly not designed to be the last word on the subject, but I hope that the validity of its basic structure and the fundamental concepts upon which it is based will make it a useful guide for other USA in ESCOM personnel.
Okay,
All right, a bunch of letters there.
Right.
Who are required to take the gateway training or work with gateway materials. All right, that's at the end of page 2. And it's signed Wayne F.
Let me tell you who USA INSCOM is.
Yeah,
these are the people that are, which I found very strange, who were required to take it. It is the United States Army Intelligence and Security Command. That's who were required to take it.
So they want these guys, in other words, to be able to remote view, basically, because of their position in the military. All right.
Yeah, so these are the people that are required to do it. I mean, think about it, like you got a job and now you're required to do this process, which we're going to get into what it is. I know it's kind of like a little bit hard to follow of what exactly this process, the gateway process, really is. Because just kind of through the opening statement, it's hard to tell really what it is. But what it basically is learning how to, one, enter another dimension, and two, how to put thoughts in people's minds that affect them not just mentally, but physically. Which is crazy, right?
Oh yeah, and that right there speaks to like remote viewing, because there's remote viewing, there's remote influencing,
right?
And that's also a process that is using science and I don't know, different beta waves and stuff to get you into that state so that you can do that. So it's technology. Who's to say it wasn't shown to them, this technology? Sure, they might have been able to figure some stuff out themselves, but we know the principalities like to give us knowledge that works out for their agenda, all throughout history. Go ahead, Krip.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Who gave these guys even the idea that they would attempt this to begin with? And what's the agenda behind it?
Right. I'm sure a few decades before they were doing it with ceremonies and crystal balls and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So if we look at the first guy, it's how do I pronounce his name? Ishak Bentov, right? So if we look back in the beginning, he initially based on the conversation with another person, the models developed by Ishtar Bentov, right? So Ishtar Bentov, right? He actually first started out at the Israeli Defense Forces. This is where he started in 1948. He was saved in World War II from death. He's Jewish. Never really had a degree. And he got into consciousness. That was his thing. The state of consciousness and awareness and how your consciousness affects you. And so, this really trips me out that, you have a guy that's from the Israeli Defense Forces that is into consciousness, biomedical engineering. Also, that's the application of engineering principles and design concepts to medicine and biology for healthcare purposes, which we're totally into. What is that, like AIs, right? This goes way back. This is like things that these guys have been doing forever. What I find strange is kind of like how he died. He actually died in an airline crash. 271 passengers, which to date is in the United States the deadliest single plane crash ever.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that. I forgot about that.
Back in 1979, just right after his book on consciousness came out, a year or two after. Right? And so some of these guys, they're into, what they find out, but some of them, I really think they don't really buy into the system, and if they speak out against it, well, there you go. He also began a workshop in the basement of the Catholic Church in Belmont, Massachusetts in the 1960s. Do you see how all these things tie together? What is he doing if he's learning how to consciously get out of our dimension and doing, what was that? The other one, the biomedical engineering. Yeah, he's doing workshops in the basement of the Catholic Church. Right. I don't know. So that's who this guy is that he refers to. That's just one of them. The other guy that we brought up was Niels Bohr. And Niels Bohr, again, we're going back to, I believe, the 40s again. And this guy, so he referenced him as a renowned physicist who is explaining how to use your right-left brain in conjunction, not separate. So he's another physicist, Nobel Prize winner in physics, and was into atomic structure and quantum theory, and pretty much did the model of the atom and the atomic nucleus, which is, I guess, a lot of credit to part of the nuclear warheads. He was in the German nuclear weapon project, the Manhattan Project, right? The tube alloys, which is the English nuclear project. So he was involved in all of the country's nuclear projects. And he was involved in the establishment of CERN and the establishment of the RISO of the Danish Atomic Energy Commission. So, these are the people that this guy is referring to in this document as to his research on the gateway process. So I think that's important that we look at, what he's looking at to bring into what he discovered through this project. I think that's kind of like where I was going at with the name of these people. If that makes any sense to anybody. Sorry. Yeah, I know it's a little deep, but that's crazy, right? I mean, of all the things, we got a guy here that involved with CERN. Well, isn't that something that stands out for us?
I find it more interesting just the whole Israel part, only because as we've seen lately, Israel's been being brought up quite a bit now. That he's from there, and yet he was involved in all this, and now if you see on the news lately with Trump establishing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, or the main city, and just everything else. I mean, there's even an article I read recently where Israel sent up supposed to be a 3 billion or 3 million something hit got us onto the moon. That I don't know, man. I mean, like I said, this document is very strange, and it just leaves so many questions for me.
Right. That's the thing about this article is like it's so in depth, yet it also could be looked at like also in a misleading way, right? This is kind of like where we're doing this, right?
Sure. So, I mean, the guy you were talking about, his history before, it sounds like they might have even tapped him right from Operation Paperclip, or his father, maybe. They knew those guys if all those connections go that far back, and it's all seems to be the same players. So,
right, no, you're absolutely right.
He's related to those guys.
Let me see. Yeah, because even like Bohr's children, one of them, he was a Nobel Prize, Peace Prize winner as well. I mean, it just goes through the, it just doesn't stop, of the family tree line on this. Trying to see who his dad was, but very prominent people back then that, I never even heard of these people, but I mean, look what they were doing, right? I mean, and look at all the different projects they were all involved with, and how it all wraps around, kind of all ties together with everything, right? That you could look at today with the things that we see today, even with the Mandela effect and things. There's things that they can do to manipulate your mind in a physical and memory state. This is just one of them. There's other ones out there. This is just one of them. And then if we look at, if we go to the actual now meat of it, the introduction, I don't know if you want to touch on that, Stone Bender, going into the introduction on it, if you have it up.
Sure, give me a minute. Let me hop over there.
Okay. So in the introduction, it's going to talk about the Monroe Institute and Hemisync. And we'll get into that as well. And some of the things. This is just the introduction. And then through that introduction, then he actually breaks down each piece of the different ways of other people have used it to tie together what the gateway actually is doing. Just really mind-blowing that, how just real enough, who'd ever have thought that they have that much power in over us to manipulate our thoughts, our minds, the way we feel, our moods. It alters our moods down to sexual, whether you feel how you feel about something. It's very, well, pisses me off. Be
Pretty
honest with
invasive.
you. Does piss me off.
And I'm sure it's tied into 5G networks and stuff like that too. It seems to be like a similar technology, and that's rolling out soon.
Right? I mean, you can only imagine that in, how many years from now there's going to be that document released on what 5G really did, right?
Right.
From some guy that did a study on it for him. So. Sorry. If you want to hit that introduction part. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see here. Sorry about my voice. I'm so congested right now. Let's see. The gateway experience, brain hemisphere synchronization in perspective. Introduction. In order to describe the Monroe Institute, which I'll bring up the Monroe Institute later, because I read a book that seems to be, it does tie in with this exactly. It was around 2005, 2004. It was put out. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it also talks about the Monroe Institute. So in order to describe the Monroe Institute technique for achieving altered states of consciousness, the gateway experience involving brain hemisphere synchronization, or hemisync, the most effective way to begin is to briefly profile the basic mechanics which underlay operation of related methods such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. It is easiest to effectively describe what gateway is by beginning with a short description of those associated techniques that share some common aspects with the gateway experience, but which are nevertheless different. In this way, we can develop a frame of reference at the outset, which will provide useful concepts to explain and understand gateway by comparison as we proceed. Part 2, hypnosis. According to the theories of psychologist Ronald Stone, no relation to me, by the way, and the biomedical engineering models of Itzhak Bentov, hypnosis is basically a technique which permits acquisition of direct access to the sensory motor cortex and pleasure centers and lower cerebral or emotional portions and associated pleasure centers of the right side of the human brain following successful disengagement of the stimulus screening function of the left hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the mind. It fulfills the function of screening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to allowing passage to the right hemisphere of the mind. The right hemisphere, which functions as the non-critical, holistic, nonverbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept what the left hemisphere passes to it without question. Consequently, if the left hemisphere can be distracted either through boredom or through reduction to the soporific, semi-sleep state, external stimuli, to include hypnotic suggestion, are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere where they're accepted and acted upon directly. The result may involve an emotional reaction orienting in the lower cerebral region or the sensory or motor responses, requiring involvement of the cortex and so on. Both the sensory and the motor cortex of the right cerebral portion of the brain contain a sequence of points known as the homunculus, which corresponds to points in the body. See Exhibit 1, next page. the next page, there's a diagram that you kind of have to see. Stimulation of the corresponding area of the cortex causes immediate response in the associated portion of the body. There's your remote targeting and targeted individuals, what they complain of right there. Consequently, induction of the suggestion that the left leg is numb, if it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory cortex, will result in electrical reaction being generated that will induce the feeling of numbness. Similarly, the suggestion that the person is experiencing a general feeling of happiness and well-being would be referred to the appropriate pleasure centers located in the lower cerebral portion or in the cortex of the right hemisphere, thereby inducing the suggested feeling of euphoria. Finally, suggestions such as one that informs the hypnotic subject that he enjoys enhanced concentration or powers of memory would be responded to in the right hemisphere by accessing unused information, storage capacity normally held in the reserve, as well as results of left hemisphere selection and control process. This aspect will become significant in the context of the gateway process when attention is given to examining the way that hypnosis may be used to accelerate progress in the early stages of the gateway experience.
Okay, that word is homunculus. I'm gonna get into that. You guys are gonna trip on what that word is. It's actually considered a little man inside your mind, inside your brain. But let's just stop right there real quick because I want to get back to what the hemi sync is. HEMI -sync. So this touches back on the Robert Monroe Institute. Basically what he did, he actually has an institute. He did not promote it through any type of advertising or anything, that you can actually have outer body experience. What he used is brainwave synchronization to bring the your two hemispheres of your brains together through music, which allows them to actually do altered states of consciousness, which is altered state of consciousness is, not being in this conscience, right? And he found out that it's by wearing headphones for some reason, which always trips me out when I read this, that it responded in a third sound called binaural beats. And without the headphones, it didn't work. So he used these things and commercialized them in the forms of audios and CDs. So obviously it could be done through mainstream media then, right? To be able to send out these sound waves to affect your consciousness by pretty much having your one side of your hemisphere, your brain, telling the other side that listens to it and then reacts according to what it's told without question, is basically what it is. And then where Stone was getting into is one of the many different ways is the hypnosis. Um, and again, so just to point on something, the right hemisphere, which functions as a non-critical, holistic, non-verbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept what the left hemisphere passes to it without question. So if they can put something into right that right side that you will not question yourself as a person, it passes it on to the left side. The left side takes that in without question, which is just crazy. I mean, I don't know, just the thought of this, right? That they can figure this stuff out freaks me out in itself. Is it not you guys to even think about right, left brain and how it works? It really flips me out.
How about you, Crypt?
Go ahead, Snow.
Oh no, I was going to see. I was going to ask you, does it freak you out or what? Freaks me out a little bit.
Oh yeah, well, the whole thing, man. I mean, like I said, it leads to a lot more questions as far as how long have they been doing this? How they attacking us with this, and what's the final agenda for it? It does freak me out. I've noticed things, especially if you think about today and how everyone's connected through their cell phones. I don't know if you guys have ever watched, but I have. I've sat back and watched people come out like on a break, and the first thing they do is put that phone right there in their face. That's the first thing you do. You got people that you've heard stories of people actually, accidentally killing themselves to rescue their phones. So, they got a media. I mean, it's more so than TV. Back then it was TV, and you had that, and we already seen, plenty of documentation to show that they can send programs and hidden messages all throughout TV. And if you even think about it, when you guys bring up in that paper about hypnosis, I mean, remember the term vegging out in front of the TV. That's the same thing. It really puts you in a hypnotic state. So it's freaky to know that your brain can open up and accept this information and send it over to the other side of your brain without question.
Right, but I think that as it relates to the Mandela effect, which I think it does, they don't have everything worked out, or we wouldn't be talking about the Mandela effect in these circles, because nobody would have noticed.
Right, maybe they're
this could be Mandela effect could be the first wide.
I was saying maybe they're trying to fine tune the right frequency that message they want to get across will be not questioned by anybody, and they use these small things like that we see in the Mandela effect in a way to test, because they're not really significant in our their overall how we live or think, right? We just see it like, I see that there's a change in a movie in Jaws. Does it really affect me in a way of like I'm going to do something they want me to do? So maybe these things is part of it is that they're testing, like I always said, like a beta test until they can refine it to once they can do something and nobody notices the change, then push out the information they want to put on us. Maybe. I don't know. Just a thought. But I mean, if we look at the next, right after what you just said with the homunculus, which I'll get into in a second because that's really trippy. So this is where I was talking about what the your left leg numb. Stimulation of the corresponding area of the cortex causes induction of the suggestion that the left leg is numb. If it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory feeling of numbness. Then you're going to feel the numbness. So they can actually put a suggestion in your mind to where you actually have a physical feeling from what they say, not just a thought, but actually physically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me is like huge. Like they could tell you you're sick. You're sick. They could tell you you're happy. You're happy. I mean, this is insane that they even are allowed to have this technology and mess with us and not tell us that they're able to do this. And where are they doing it at? I'm sure they're using it. They have to be using it, right? They just cannot not be using this, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've heard of cases of people all the time that, if you think about it hard enough, you can either make yourself sick, make yourself better. So it's messed up to know that there's a study and this was going on out there that they're actually trying to, I guess it sounds to me like trying to hone in on that ability that we all have.
And so then I go on to say, similarly, the suggestion that the person is experiencing a pleasure, experiencing a general feeling of happiness, as well would be referred to the appropriate right hemisphere. So this is the thing. There's different parts in that hemisphere that target certain things, like what would make your leg feel numb, what would make you feel the emotion of being happy. And so they've figured out that through the right side of the brain what to target in information so that actually sends the information to the correct area of the left side of your brain. Or I might have got that backwards, right or left. But in the cortex of the right hemisphere, therefore reducing the suggestion feeling of euphoria, so that they can now give you through whatever information through the sound the feeling of euphoria. Finally, suggests such as one that informs the hypnotic subject that he enjoys enhanced concentration of powers of memory would be responded to in the right hemisphere by accessing unused information storage capacity normally held in reserve as a result of the left hemisphere selection and control process. I mean, this aspect will become significant in the context of the gateway process, when attention is given to examining the way that hypnosis may be used to accelerate progress in their early stages of the gateway experience. I don't know, man. I know this is kind of like deep, but I mean, if you kind of break it down and what they're doing and how they're doing it, he's just stating in this the process, but there's not anything in here, which I kind of wish they did. I haven't actually got all the way through it, is what they're actually using it for, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, even think about it. Like you said, it says it right there: happiness and euphoria. That means I mean, when you're happy, you're laid back, you're relaxed. So then that would open up your mind to more suggestion because you're happy and euphoric. If you're in that state of mind, you're not going to question things. It's different than if you're angry or hurt or upset or sick. Then your brain's going a mile a minute because, like if you're stressed, you're stressed about everyday life or bills, or maybe you're in a argument with a significant other, or, you're not going to be open to suggestion. That's just in general human nature. But if you're happy and euphoric, then, you're open to suggestion. You're more laid back. You're more able to agree with a situation. And that's what's really, I find interesting, that they actually use those terms in there to explain that. Just
right.
Like,
so are you saying that like they're going to use that kind of to open the doorway that we're going to relax you and have a state of euphoria, so that now we're going to pop this propaganda down your throat and you're going to be more accepting to it?
Well, if you think about even when people go in for regular hypnosis, what do? The hypnotize you. They tell you to close your eyes or watch a watch or something like that, and they'll get totally relaxed. They tell you to relax your body, and then they get you into that completely relaxed state. So then they give you those suggestions. Like those tricks when I've never seen one personally, but you catch them before about people being hypnotized to then start cluck like a chicken when they hear a bell. They're planting that suggestion into your deep subconscious, and how they're getting it there is by relaxing you, making you happy and at peace.
Okay, but and then to touch on that, yeah, and the person that they do that to, they don't even remember doing it. How about
Exactly.
that? I mean, they're actually physically doing and physically saying and physically moving and doing what they're told, yet they have no memory ever from that ever on, even after they watch themselves do it, no memory of it at all. So and we know this is I think this is why it's the first introduction part of it is the hypnosis, because it's been around for such a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, when we look at some of these things that they're they're able to do, who's to say they cannot do massive hypnosis over your digital TV that Obama mandated, over new technology through the 5G network, as they keep using that to increase the waves, sound waves, and so forth. And all of a sudden we become what? I mean, if we, like I said, the majority of the people that are in our community that we talk to every day, they don't watch TV. They don't watch your average shows. They don't come home, turn on the TV, watch the commercials, watch the news. And we're the ones that you see, though, we're the ones that see these changes. We're the ones that see this, the possibilities of what they're doing to us. Where you talk to your other people that come home and do that, and they're just like oblivious to it.
Yeah.
So what is? I mean, this is definitely everybody always wants to know the hows and the whys. I think this is definitely part of one of many of the hows. I'm not quite sure where the why fits in yet. I think that's still open, but definitely showing how they do these things. And this is stuff back, years ago, you guys. We're talking, if this article came out in 83, right? And we're talking about people from the 1940s. Think about where they are today in their technology.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's more advanced. And I mean, as far as the why, the only thing I can conclude is for it, like we all know, being awake and going down these rabbit holes, it's just for mass control. It's different like that movie with Roddy Piper, They Live. You remember the subliminal messaging when he put on those glasses? He'd see things. And, all those subliminal messages everywhere. And if you think about it, even in that movie, they were broadcasting frequency. Because that's how he more or less, remember at the end, he woke them up by destroying the I think it was a TV or news station that had the satellite dish that was actually pointed, instead of pointing up, it was pointed kind of out to everybody.
Right now we have all these 5G towers where they didn't have those back when that movie was made.
Exactly. So,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one of the whys could also be, to me, it sounds like it aligns with MK Ultra, except it's something that they can do to the masses. You don't have to go down into some room where they strap you in a chair and they give you that MK Ultra process. You could be sitting in your living room or whatever, and the signal comes through from the towers, from your Wi-Fi or wherever. But one of the whys, I think, could also be, I was just thinking about the whole idea of the remotely influencing you to experience euphoria. Well, what happens when the Antichrist comes onto the scene? Are you and your whole neighborhood gonna feel euphoric all of a sudden? You're more likely to accept that false prophet as Jesus. Maybe they can implement it as a part of that, because I'm sure Project Bluebeam has something to do with that, and that's been going on for a long time. So this seems like it could tie into it also.
That's true.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, even you can even. I mean, this whole entire paper opens up so many different avenues of things that we're seeing and that we talk about today. Besides Mandela effect, I mean, it could come down to what if they're actually helping us be more euphoric and suggestive to whatever they want to give us by all the chemtrailing that's going on. With barium. What if that helps? Is another part of it. That's getting put into our systems, so that way we are more of a conductor of antenna, especially with aluminum. Because for me, when I even heard and read about the power of how they were sending aluminum, the first thing that came into my mind was, you guys remember before they went everything digital, when you used to have the old TVs? One of the things some of the people used to do, at least my grandparents, when the antenna didn't pick up the signal well enough, you would take aluminum foil and wrap it around the antennas to try to boost that signal.
Right, man. And aluminum's not conductive electrically, but through that signal, sure. There's proof right there that it works,
So, that right there leads me to the question, is that why they're maybe doing it? Why we always see it? Because, I mean, obviously it's everywhere. And it's gotten so bad to where you see it on TV shows now. When they flash shots of the screen or commercials, half the time of anything in the sky, there's a line, there's a trail. It's one of the things that I've questioned a long time now, especially when you mentioned earlier, Cowboy, about Obama making it a law to go digital. What's the problem? Why do we have to go digital? And it was like all of a sudden overnight, no one has an older TV anymore. Now everything went straight to these new digital high def, and they just get bigger and bigger and get more and more functions to where we're constantly getting showered with all types of this invisible energy from the 5G towers, from the Wi-Fi. It does. It leaves a lot of questions in my head, especially once I looked over this document and I saw that, especially with the euphoric and happy state, that just, to me, puts you in a state of mind of open suggestion without question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder if it ties into some of the more different subjects too. Like, for instance, some of the things that they try to push on us in mainstream media with sexual orientation or gun control, politics, and racism that they've been doing against police officers. All these things of divide and conquer, and people get so very, very one-sided on these subjects based off of what, though, really, right? It's in emotional ties to it, maybe, and how they view things, but yet, really, we're all in this together, and everything that they do in this world and society, they divide and conquer, all the way down to whether you prefer Coke or Pepsi, Chevy or Ford, right? Prefer, what gas station, Shell or Chevron. Right? I mean, everything is so oriented towards division, because with division, it divides the strength, and the strength is us. And if we weren't divided, we'd be 10 times more stronger as a society together. But we're controlled under these people And they use this technology, I think, to persuade us into wars, division, believing that we need to wake up every morning and go to work for the system and live our lives the way, the slave system they put upon us. And they start that all the way back from school. That state of mind starts in school, And so, I think it has a lot to do with that. But I think there's something that they want to do that's bigger down the road. And I think that has a lot to do with, like you said, Blue Beam Project. I think it has a lot to do with the alien deception. And I think we're getting closer. They really want to be able to hone in on that to deceive as many people as they can through that technology. And I think, was it you, Stone, that brought up earlier on our call about the technology and that they use in the military, that the sound waves that distracts people in their thoughts, right? They even have that technology now.
Yeah, they have sound wave machines now. They can use high frequency sound to incapacitate people.
Sure, crowd control. I think they use that in Iraq already.
Yeah, they use it in Iraq.
Mounted to Humvees.
They actually use it on the Native Americans during their protest of the pipeline.
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about it, even when like a SWAT team goes in and into a place for some criminals, what are the first thing they normally do? They'll throw in a flash grenade. So that, and really all that is it's a blinding light and an extremely loud concussion, boom, to stun you, and put you incapacitated, so then they can move on in and do what they got to do. And, like you brought up about division, right when you say that, I see it all the time too. And the first thing that always comes to my mind is, remember, a house divided will never stand.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the technology you were referring to, Stone Benders, that they used actually was in the Kuwait War. When they first used that technology, what it was is they're able to. It's just it's about as big as a laptop, and they can direct sound directions miles away. And what they could do is they can use the sound to make it sound like troop movement coming out of the north, and so the opponents will move to the north to counter it, and you can come in behind them. The other thing they have is the ability to put sound where you can hear a message in your head that even the person next to you can hear. And then in the Kuwaiti War, they use that technology, and that's why they all surrendered. They were being told to surrender by their god through this technology. And they actually tested this technology before that in New York on a billboard sign where, like, you and I can walk shoulder to shoulder, and that billboard has a message, and it will tell me in my head, I need to buy that. It'll look good on me or whatever. You can't even hear it. You can't even hear it.
Yeah.
And it tripped people out so hard in New York, they had to take that billboard down. So they have that technology, and they use it. They sold 70,000 units of those to the military that directs sound waves that people hear, but they hear it in their head. It's in their head. It's not out loud.
That's the voice to skull technology, isn't it? I've heard it referred to as voice to skull.
Yeah, even Lynn said voice to skull in the chat room. Yeah. So I mean, when was that developed? But
Sound,
right? I mean,
heard of the brown note. That there's a certain note and frequency that actually makes you defecate on yourself.
There's actually a frequency that can actually kill you.
Yeah.
There was what was that I was looking into? It was a frequency was given out by a fan in like this 3-story apartment building,
Oh
and
yeah,
people kept dying. Right? Did you see that?
yeah.
And there was like numerous people that kept dying there. They couldn't figure it out. Well, it was I don't know who figured it out. They figured out that the frequency that was coming from the fan, I
Vent,
think it was the fan or something.
the vent fan
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Wow, I never
crazy.
heard that one.
that it
Yeah,
was emitting such a low frequency that it was low enough that you obviously are human are as far as the hearing it, you couldn't hear it, but your brain was still picking it up.
right.
And over time, it will actually it causes a disruption within your neural pathways that eventually it makes your heart stop because it's confusing. Your brain's trying to process and it can't.
hmm and was it Tesla that almost brought down his apartment building through sound?
That I
When
don't
he
know. Seeing that.
when I don't know if it was Tesla or one of them, they figured out how frequency everything's made out of frequency, and they tapped into the frequency of the building they lived in, and it almost came down. He had to stop it. Like it was like the whole building was shaking tremendously, and he had to stop it. Stop his. I think it was Tesla that.
I think it was Tesla too. I remember hearing about that.
Well, did you guys ever see that one guy that was out doing YouTube videos for a while? He was kind of like a self-proclaimed scientist, where he was floating bowling balls and that off of a speaker through sound. That he was able to levitate objects from it.
No.
No.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
yeah. He in fact he got in trouble. He had he had the government coming down on him a few times because he was able to show he'd do these videos where he would have a speaker set up and then he could actually put a bowling ball and he'd have it set up at such a frequency to where you know obviously when you look at like, I'm sure you all have looked at a speaker and you see how it vibrates. And he
Mm-hmm.
was able to set up the frequency in such a way to where it actually would levitate a bowling ball.
Wow. Not
Well,
surprising.
yeah. See, that's that speaks to why they shut him down. Speaks to that. Some people can just figure this stuff out on their own. I mean, there was that book. I didn't read it, but it was called Brotherhood of the Bell about the Nazis and their some kind of a frequency that they can levitate things with. And
Right.
it was some kind of bell-shaped object or something. And also after that, there's this guy down in Florida, Ed Leadskin, who was I don't know if he was Ukrainian or something. He was an immigrant. He came over here and he was a stonemason, and he built down in Florida. He built Coral Castle,
Oh
which is
yeah,
still
I know
down there
about
to
that.
this day. Yeah, it's still down there. And he said that the original site where he built it was moved to where it is today. And they say that he had no help moving it. One of the doors was 9 tons, and he moved it in the dead of the night, and nobody saw him do it. Nobody that anyone knows of around the area helped him with it. And he said himself that he basically unlocked how the Egyptians built the pyramids.
Yeah, and
And
stone
he had,
possibility.
yep, he had some block and tackle there. But the block and tackle that he had when he would bring people around and show people the area and what he built was so much smaller than the block and tackle that you would need to lift even a 9-ton stone. And I don't think that was even one of the biggest stones made out of coral, local Florida stone that he was working with. So that guy, and he actually wrote a book that's really thin and it's published on demand. Ed Leadskin, Coral Castle.
Yeah, lead
And
skin cap is what it's called.
yeah. And the first half was him talking about, that he unlocked the secrets of the Egyptians at some point, but he wouldn't say how he did it. And one of the photographs from his area down there in Coral Castle was of, like a tripod that was about 20 feet tall. It was made out of telephone poles or something.
Yeah.
And there was, you could use that as a block and tackle to move something, but the block and tackles, like I said, were a lot smaller that he displayed than the ones you would need for moving stones like that weight. But at the top of this thing, there was a box, a metal box about the size of a toaster oven, and there was only a picture of it. No one knew what was in there. And the second half of that book is basically entitled like How to Raise a Young Girl. And he goes into talking about, what you should do and what you shouldn't do when you're raising a young lady, as a proper member of society, and how she should be and everything. And a lot of people think it was a metaphor for how to raise a stone in the way that he did. I can't figure it out, but it seems a little weird that he would have a chat. The second half of his book would be, guy with no kids about raising Ed Leadskin.
Okay. Did you want to touch on Monroe's book? Because again, this leads right back to using frequencies to move out of the dimension. And just to get back to the real quick before Stone talks about the Monroe book that he read, the gateway experience, right? I find it very striking that they name it the gateway, because gate, by definition, is an opening, a portal. So this is really talking about is going through the experience of going through a portal, or in some instances, having a portal within yourself of allowing information to come in without your knowledge, your consent. And this is exactly what this is talking about, which is, we should be aware of this. Seriously, I don't know what we could do to stop it. How do we stop it? Do we pray for protection? Obviously, but these are things that these people have been doing to us from as long as at least the 40s, right? And if they're saying 40s, it's got to be older than that. So, anyway, do you want to touch on the Monroe book that you read?
Sure. Yep. Well, it sounds like from what you were saying before, it sounds like tinfoil hats are only going to help. They're not going to hinder it. So,
right.
All you conspiracy analysts, just throw out that hat, man. You're going to need a depleted uranium helmet probably in the future.
Or lead.
All right. So I was, this book that I read, I think relates to this. It definitely does. It's got to. And I forgot, I think it was put out maybe around 2000. I read it around 2005, and it's called Psychic Warrior. And the guy who wrote it, his name is David Morehouse. And David Morehouse was a contractor for the military, and he was involved in this project that he writes about in the book called Project Sunstreak. And what it was basically the government remote viewing project, which I'm sure they got a lot of their techniques from some of this work too, since this was released in written in 83, released more recently. But so this guy worked for the government as a civilian contractor. He was involved in remote viewing, and there's this guy Mel that was the head of the program. I forgot his last name, but he was a good remote viewer too. And they used him. They used certain people that were good at it, and it was a process where they used white noise and other stimuli to, astrally project, basically, for under the guise at least of securing the nation. Sending these guys out into the ether to look for drugs or weapons buried in the bulkheads of submarines. They found some stuff like that. And what they would do, they would draw it out when they were in this state. They would draw things that they were experiencing, basically. and they sent him in a controlled remote viewing, it was called, and they sent him to different places to try to get information, basically gather information remotely. And what happened was this guy decided that he wanted to write a book about it. He came out and wrote a book. They kind of knew that he was doing it, and they threatened him in a few ways, even though he was an asset to them because he was still in that program. And he went ahead, people knew him, I guess, and he went ahead and published it. So what they did, instead of to draw attention to it by maybe taking him out, in my opinion, what they did is the government released their own findings before on their remote viewing program. They came out with it and admitted it before his book hit the bookstores. They put their own document out that said, "Yeah, we're doing this," but we didn't really get any good results. So the government the project was shut down because our results weren't good. But what he writes is the results were good, and they were pretty successful about it. And
you there?
You read me?
We lost you there. You were talking about the results.
Oh, so the results, I'm not sure where I cut out, but the results were basically the government released their own paper before his book hit the stands and said that, yeah, we have a remote viewing program, except we didn't get any good results. And then his book came out and he said otherwise. So pretty much they were debunking his book by coming out and admitting that they had this program. There's this place, I can't think of the name of it. It's like it's not the Monroe Institute, but it's another place similar to that where they have kind of new age things going on. And it's right across the river here in upstate New York, not too far from me. And David Morehouse, the guy who wrote that book, was involved in that program, actually taught classes. I think they're like $2,000 or $3,000 to be in his class. And he was teaching people how to do remote viewing. And then remote viewing caught on to where people heard about, this thing called remote viewing. Almost anyone can do it and be successful at it. And the way I found out about the guy's book is, I think I actually read it first, but I was talking to my landlady back in 2006 for a while. And she had actually trained with this guy. So I was talking to her about it, and she had met him, and she knew, I told her I read the book and everything. And she was kind of new agey. And, that was kind of like my personal connection to that. Like, I actually met somebody who took one of his classes and met the guy. And I'm not sure if he's written any books.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. I'm not sure if he's written anything else in the meantime or not, or what his status is, but it definitely connects to that. I mean, they probably got a lot of their information through that program, through the government. It makes sense time-wise and everything they were doing. And a lot of their research was also based on this guy, Russell Targ. And Russell Targ was a Russian. And Russia also had a remote viewing program. And theirs started back in the late 50s, early 60s or something like that. Which, if the nature of our government, a lot of us realize that, it's not us versus them all the time. We're working together behind the scenes a lot of the time with things, and where we shouldn't be. Of course, we just get along in space and we don't get along on the ground. I find that weird too, but that speaks to the New World Order, one government system that's already in place. If they're sharing information like that with a so-called enemy, and it's sensitive stuff on how to gather information and stuff, like, why would that happen unless this was a one world system already? So it kind of leads me back to that.
Right. And just to let you guys know, I mean, we just touched on hypnosis. There's transcendental meditation that he goes into. Biofeedback, we're going to get into. The gateway and the hemisync, lamp versus laser, frequency following response, role of the Renaissance, brain stimulation, energy entertainment, conscious of energy, holograms, the part encodes the whole, the conscious matrix, the brain in phases, and just evaluation, self-cognition, time, space, dimension, intervening dimensions, subatomic particles. This is a very deep project. Special status of out-of-body experience, from the Big Bang to Taurus, our place in time, quality and consciousness, consciousness and perspective. I mean, this is gateway method. Hemisync introduced, partnering, problem solving, advanced techniques. Just to give you like a kind of a thing down the road. I mean, I'll just read this part. I just scanning through this. To the extent that the gateway succeeds in bringing about a refinement in energy matrix to the mind, it succeeds in expanding or altering human consciousness so that it can perceive without recourse to the intercessions of the physical sense, such that evermore of the universe hologram, and that is in parentheses, not of course accessible by a sense of perception, right? So we're not going to understand that we're seeing the hologram, can ultimately be perceived and understood. I mean, this gateway project. I mean, all we did was like read the opening introduction and touched on just one of the however many subjects part of it that brings it all together. This is going to be a series. This is going to be something that the three of us will get into once a week and go through, and hopefully by going through each of these, we get a better understanding of it. I mean, it's going to go into just looking the role of REM sleep, right? I mean, they even talk about sleep and how they affect us when we sleep. Crazy belief system considerations, and we know where we're going with that. Motivational aspect, how it's going to motivate us, and then the conclusion so he actually has a conclusion on all of this. So this is pretty in-depth stuff here. And again, with the opening letter explaining just the basics of how he came to this information and the resources he used. And then he's getting into with the first one that we went over, hypnosis, is that he's bringing all of these different ways of outer body experience and being able to put suggestive thoughts in our minds into context, just to understand exactly what they were doing with the gateway. And they used all of these different methods so that they can do what? Basically, put thoughts in our heads to basically tell us that, hey, we could tell you your leg is numb if we want. We could tell you you're in a state of euphoria and you're happy if we want. We can make you angry if we want. We can make you hungry if you want. They through this there's no limitation on what they could do once they discover one, how to get the information into one hemisphere of your brain without you knowing, and two, with that information, what part of the left hemisphere of your brain that needs to go to be accepted without question that there's the result that they're looking for. Unbelievable. It's sick. It really is. And so, I don't know. We'll get more into that. You know, it's kind of where I wanted to get to so far with it, because that's as far as I did my research, you guys, as far as looking at terms. And although I do want to go over I did say I was going to do this, the homonucleus. This is going to be crazy. I'll actually present this. You guys are going to trip off of this. So just to reiterate, where he talked about that was through the first part with the hypnosis, right? And he was talking about the challenges of the right hemisphere where they are accepted and acted upon directly. The result may involve an emotional reaction originating in the lower cerebral region, sensory motor responses requiring involvement of the cortex, and so on. Both the sensory and the motor cortes, whatever, of the right cerebral portion of the brain contain a sequence of points known as the homunculus, which corresponds to the points in the body. And that's where it says, see Exhibit 1, next page. So that's what I'm going to show you, what this is, and actually not what it is in reference to what he is referencing it to, because his reference is actually different than the older version of this term. This is not, this is an older term and used different ways. The term today is used, let me if I can find it, where it says where it's being used today, is different than in the science world today than it was used back in 1500s, 1493, 1540. So this is a term that's been around quite a while. So it the word, the term home, it's homunculus.
Homunculus.
Homunculus. I mean, I wish I had the pronunciation for me. I'm an idiot.
Homunculus.
Homunculus, I think that's how I remember hearing it pronounced.
So it first appeared in, you know, I'm going to present this because I'm just a bad reader. I really am a bad reader, you guys. I apologize. I hate reading. Reading's like the worst subject for me of all. Let me get to it. You guys are going to trip over this. I could tell you that right now. Can you see this? I don't know if you guys looked it up or not.
Can't hate reading, man. Reading is fundamental.
You know what? I'm a math guy. Give me a math problem all day long. I'm right down with it. All right, can you guys see it? Can you guys? You know what I need to wait? I got to go back and make sure that I'm clicked on presenter.
I can see it.
All right, can everybody in the chat room see it? If you guys want to see if they can see it in the chat room, because I can't see anything but the screen here.
Give me a minute. I had to pull it up, but I can look.
I got it up. Anybody see that? What's being presented in the chat room? Multitasking isn't good for you, Niacus. You ever hear that? You get less done when you multitask.
Yeah, it's half-ass on everything when you multitask.
Multi-half-ass, you mean?
Conquer what's in front. So are they able to see it?
I can't see it, but I'm paused, so I don't get the echo. Therion. Hey, Therion, you see what's being presented? Miss Honey Anamaya says C, which I believe is yes in Spanish.
Okay, perfect. So there's the word. Figure out how to say it. So it's there's the Latin word for it, for little person, and it is a representation of a small human being. Popularized in the 16th century in the alchemy, ancient branch of natural philosophy.
So basically, it is homunculus. Then it's basically what they used in alchemy to create a human being.
Here we go. There you go. So you know about this, right?
Yeah, actually, there were some YouTube videos about someone who recreated, he supposedly died in Russia 2 years ago, where he created a homunculus.
Mm-hmm. And here's something. If this, I found very strange. They put the sperm of a man, right? Sealed it for 40 days in the highest degree of purification in a horse's womb, right? And waited for it to stir around, right? After this time, it will look somewhat like a man, but transparent without body. If after this is fed wisely with acurenum of human blood and nourished for 40 weeks and be kept in even heat in the horse's womb, a living human child grows therefrom, with its members like another child, which is born of a woman, but much smaller. Now, do I believe this? I'm not saying I do, but what I'm saying is I find it strange that they use this word in this experiment, right? And if you read more on this, you guys can look this up and read through it yourself. So basically what it is, if we look at images of it, to give you an idea, this is the image that he was talking about. Oh man, where'd it go? Okay, so this is the image where inside the brain is an image of a little man. And so
Yeah,
this is something
I dropped in the side chat for you guys with the YouTube videos about the current guy that supposedly did that and made a homunculus.
all right. So I don't know. I think that's weird. When I looked into it, and they're talking about, going inside your mind and creating thoughts, and now they reference that area as a little man inside your brain. It's just, food for thought, strange, crazy. Is it really a little man? I don't know. I don't believe it for a second. But what is it? There's obviously something, right? That part of your brain kind of controls both sides of your hemisphere, and they're able to tap into that. I think that's what's the important part of it. And you know, just going back to the 16th century, this is stuff that, I mean, if you think about going back to the 16th century, I mean, you not remember like how taboo it was to do uh, autopsies on people, right, and things like that before that or after that. Right. So yeah, how is it they're coming up with this information that shows you that the Nephilim bloodline, they've been teaching their offspring things that for the beginning of time that they've kept from us. We've been in the dark, and they've been using it for their own purpose, right? Isn't that crazy? I mean,
yeah. See, when you mention the little man, I guess the first thing that my mind comes to mind, as far as the little man in your brain, would be like Jiminy Cricket. Your conscious, let your conscious be your guide. That's in the back of your head that usually most people should listen to. I know a lot don't. So if that's what they're using, then I mean, to me, it just sounds like, yeah, that's it. They're trying to get a hold of your conscious or your subconscious, that inner voice of yourself.
Right, and that goes back to what the little angel on your left saying do it right, and the little angel on the right saying doing wrong. Right? Yeah. Isn't that kind of right?
Yeah, a little devil.
Yeah. And now they have like what the technology they could do, right? I mean, think about this, like smart cars, your cell phone, dish TV, your laptop. I mean, they put all of this right in front of you, right? And they, going back to about creating moods. I don't know. Do you guys remember Facebook did a whole test without people's permission, where they would test certain people, selected people, and they would post things on their Facebook that were either really positive or really negative, and then watch the reaction of the people.
Right. Well, this is like posting things in your mind that one person sees something and somebody sees something else. It makes me feel like the spelling of J.C. Penney, as far as the Mandela effect is concerned, shit, maybe it was with an E, even though I remember it with no E. Who's to say where that came from? I mean, it's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the one that's correct, the one that takes less energy to create. So instead of us all being from another dimension, maybe we literally just have all different memories. I mean, they're putting it right out in front of us anyway. That thing that you were talking about, Cowboy, with the TV that you had discovered, the whole idea of television, through TV, you can experience, either one thing or the other, and they can project things.
Yeah, it's actually a movie. It's not a TV show. So yeah. So just to reiterate what he's talking about.
Well, there was an app too, wasn't there? There was an app you were talking about that could.
So there's two things. One is there's an app that can make you forget your favorite TV show or movie or whatever you see on TV. That specific show, nothing else during that day, supposedly, so that you can rewatch it again as if you've never seen it before and enjoy it for the first time again. So it's a free app that you could get. And yeah, so I mean, that in itself says a lot that there's just a free app out there. And that always tripped me out. Like, parents are not freaked out that, you go to somebody and tell them, about the Mandela effect, and they look at you like you're crazy. The next thing you know, they're like going, "Hey, erase my memory." I mean, that's how dumbified they've created us with this technology. Secondly, there's a company that makes movies, so that you get hooked up to wires, and you could go sit and watch a movie, and based off of your feelings during the movie, the movie will alter towards how you feel. And so you can have, you could sit and watch a movie. And this is the test they were doing. They were only doing one person at a time. So I don't know how it would work with like a movie. Like, I think it can't be like where it's like a bunch of people watching at the same time. They take one person at a time and they put them in a little trailer and had them watch the movie. And then when they came out, they showed them like, well, the ending of that movie and the way it went throughout the movie was based off your feelings. And then they had another person go in, and then they would come out, several people, and they would come out and talk about what movie they just watched. And it was based off of like their feelings. Directing, obviously you got to look at it like there's only so many different ways the movie can go. But I mean, if you wanted it to end a certain way, like a happy ending or not a happy ending or whatever, but they were able to do that.
It's your own adventure movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's just why. I mean, that's just so I mean, you can look at the technology they have today and what they do with it, and so many different ways they could do it. And it just blows my mind how people throughout time, if you look at people throughout time, how generations move according to what they are told they're to do. If you look at the way people lived their lives in the 90s and what they accepted in life and what they were against is different than maybe from the 70s or different from today. Yet, if you go against that, you're an outcast and wrong. But never mind that it was okay 10 years ago and acceptable, right? You see, and they just direct people to how they want them to react and think. They use all this technology. They listen to us. It's all the same people that run the world that own all the major companies, even though they think you have a choice, and they'll listen to what your thoughts are. They'll show whether it's a commercial or just conversation, like, yeah, man, those things suck. I hate those things. The things will go away. But if you're like, oh man, I love those things, then they know where to put their money, and their money goes there, and then next thing you know, it takes off, right? I mean, even like Facebook, I think I told you and Prime this, I was listening to Brian's Farley stream when he was talking about going to San Diego Zoo. All right, I was just listening. I was just had it on my TV, was listening. Got home from work, it was on. Wasn't even on the phone, nothing. Just turned it on my laptop, and he was talking about going to the San Diego Zoo, and the elephants were his favorite. That's it. Didn't think nothing of it, right? 2 days later, I'm at the pulling up my Facebook. I don't go on much. Sorry, everybody, I don't. And I'm scrolling through Facebook, and the first ad that comes up, would you not believe, is an ad on Facebook for the San Diego Zoo, and the little video thing that plays with it is the elephants. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, for that, I still believe that that's because the cell phones are listening. Because I've had instances where I've had the wife and I would be discussing something, and it's been proven even on her phone, where we'll be talking about my fish tank or something with my fish, and then all of a sudden on Facebook, she's got advertisements for aquariums and other products. even though she doesn't search or look it up. So I truly believe the phone's listening to us all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, my buddy had that streaming music thing. I forgot which one it was, where you can type in whatever and it plays a similar song. Well, we were on a job site one day. There's three of us, and everything we were talking about, whatever we were talking about, a song came on that had that subject somehow in the lyrics. Three,
Yeah.
4, 5 times throughout the day. And these guys were bugging out too. I pointed it out and they started noticing. So that's just I mean, that's out there already, man. It's like, but who knows about it? It's above board stuff that is known, but nobody just realizes that they do that. It's
Who
what's being
questions
done now.
things? A lot of people don't even question it.
Well, let me ask you this. Here's something that is going to trip you out. Okay, so because that's tripping me out. 2 days ago, I was thinking about a coworker of mine back on a job I had over 2 years ago. Over 2 years ago. I don't know why it came to my mind. Just popped in my head one day, and I was like, I wonder how Kevin's doing. Yesterday at work, at lunch, he texts me. And he goes, wow, hey, bro. He goes, I just downloaded, I got to see what it was on his phone. He goes, I saw your number pop up. Thought I'd check in and say hi. I'm like, wow. Hey, so we were talking. So he had, the last time I talked to him, his wife was pregnant. The daughter is now a year and a half old. He came in my mind out of nowhere. Haven't talked to him 2 years, or year and almost 2 years. Came in my mind. The next day, he's texting me because my number popped up in his phone. I don't know, dude. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't.
You didn't try to contact him?
I didn't even look him up in my phone to see if I had his number. It was just like one of those things where he popped in my mind. And I didn't talk about it. I didn't say anything. He just popped in my mind for like 2 seconds. And I was like, wonder how Kevin's doing. Wonder if he's still working there. That was it. That was the total. That's it. Done. It was in my mind. Didn't even look in my phone. Didn't look him up on my phone. Didn't look him up on Facebook. Just let it go. Like, whatever. Next day he's texting. It took me about a half hour before I responded to his text because I was trying to figure out, like, coincidence? How did this happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, what the hell? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm tripping off of it. And I don't understand it. It sounds, how crazy does that sound? So what? They can hear my thoughts? Man, that sounds crazy. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to just say it's a coincidence because I think that they can hear my thoughts. I ain't going
well, that could be just a natural ability that we all have. Like, it's happened plenty of times to me. Like, I'm thinking about somebody and they call me. It could be just a natural ability that we have, that technology, it doesn't go through that because that's been happening for a long time. You think of somebody and it happens. I mean, I swear, I think I shut down a live stream once on YouTube with my mind. I can't get into what live stream or much more about that, but it could have been an amazing coincidence, but I don't know. I don't know if it was.
No, it's the same. I've had incidents where somebody I hadn't thought or even remotely thought about in some time, and then that thought process of I wonder how they're doing, and then next thing you know, I hear from that person, or they text, or they call, or they show up, and I sometimes question, like the idea of we're all more under a collective of sorts, because it's just like that same thing about I don't know if you guys ever heard, but I've heard like anytime the idea that you may come up with, somebody else somewhere in the world's already working on it. You know, like if you wanted to vet something or you just had a thought about something, oh, you know what? Let's check that out. I mean, while you're having that thought somewhere else in another part of the world, that person's already working on getting it out, you know?
Right. Yep.
Well, I've had that before with an ex-girlfriend. Like, so I get what you're saying. Like, we were on the same kind of wavelength, thinking about each other, like, all the time. Like, as soon as you think
that's just called love, man.
Right. So that's something. But he's just somebody that I wouldn't normally ever think of, or anything. Just that's why I'm tripping. Like, I get the whole, like, if you have a connection with somebody and you have that connection, I get that because you're probably all thinking about each other a lot. Coincides, but just why I can't remember the last time I thought about it. I can't even tell you why he popped in my head. Like, there was nothing that I can think of as why he would pop in my head and why I would think how he's doing. Because really, we only worked together for a very short amount of time. We only hung out maybe twice after work at all. So it's not like somebody that was prominent in my life, or
Something
you know what I mean?
An acquaintance with.
Yeah, so that's why I was tripping. Like, this is not like, I don't know. Anyway, you guys. So that's we're gonna conclude this with this stream here. We'll all be over there. Scare Performance channel here shortly. So go over there. We'll be in the chat room there. But this is just we're only on page 3 of this thing. So if you guys liked it, cool. Leave comments. Let us know you liked it. If any questions on it or whatever. And we're definitely going to do a little more research on the next part of it. And we're going to be getting into the I cannot fucking read. Transcendental meditation. God, I suck at this.
Neo meditation.
Yeah, and we'll probably be able to at least get to that, and hopefully biofeedback and gateway and Hemming sync. Hopefully we can get through 3 sections of it next time. We'll try to get through it a little bit faster, but this one's a little bit a little longer because it was the opening part of it, trying to grasp our head around exactly what it is we're looking into and so forth. So, we'll probably be doing that either next Saturday or Sunday, depending on when we all can get together on that. I don't know if you guys still want to do another show on Bigfoot or anything. I'd like to kind of even get into the Mothman, if you guys want to maybe do that.
I'm good at talking about that.
Yeah. So look for us. We'll probably be doing a stream also during the week on something like that. And you never know in between when I go live and just have an open, fun, everybody come on and just chat away as well. So anyway, love you guys all. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Stone. Thank you, Prime.
Thank you.
I don't know. She didn't make it. She was supposed to, but she also talked about that she might have something else going on at the same time. So maybe next time she can join us.
Pre-show nap.
All right. Love you all. And we'll see you over at what's tonight?
After hours, baby.
After hours, baby. It's after hours, baby. Yeah. So we'll see you at after hours, baby. Love you all.
Take care, guys.